Thank you, Dr. Tushar. I have the honor and privilege today, and I'm sure all of us have the same, to have Dr. Amdekar sir here today to give us, to take care of the next session. It's very difficult to introduce somebody who is already well known, okay? And this is how normally we start with our discussion. But let me tell you on a personal note, Amdekar sir has influenced me personally, not only in the field of pediatrics, but also in my life as a whole. I'm sure he has touched the soul of almost every pediatrician one way or the other in city of Mumbai. Today I will not take much time. I will only mention a couple of things that have meant me personally about the work that sir has been doing all these years. Amdekar sir has been instrumental in revitalizing my alma mater, and that is Wadia Children's Hospital. Sir has been conducting PG clinics, as many of you already know, for more than 10 years, every Thursday evening at Sion Hospital. And most of all, his philosophy is to teach how to think clearly. Believe me, not to just give you information, but how to process that information that you have and logically arrive at a clinical diagnosis. Not only that, further to that, he will also teach you how to manage that particular patient or the case rationally. This is just one of the many reasons that he is such an appropriate person to take the master class, as we call it, for this symposia of symptomatology. Without much ado, I invite sir to enlighten us.
Well, at the outset, thank you very much, the organizers, both Tushars, to give me this opportunity to be here. I think clinical medicine is dying, and we all must know that 85% of diagnosis comes only through a history. If you take a good history, you almost know what you're looking at, and the physical examination just to confirm what you have thought on the history. If you could not make a diagnosis on the history, your history is incomplete, or you are incomplete as a physician. And I think the investigations are required only finally just to stamp the diagnosis, only if necessary. And I think in routine situation, therefore, all of us must make an effort to take a detailed history and be sure that you will make a diagnosis. Talking about fever, I think fever is a general symptom. It's a symptom of many diseases. But don't forget that if you want to come to a diagnosis, you must be systematic in analyzing the history to answer in sequence, first, where is the disease? Next, what is the disease? Third, what is the cause of the disease? And the fourth, what is disease doing to the health of the child? That is what is anatomy, pathology, etiology, and functional diagnosis. Look at our forefathers who taught us anatomy first in a medical school and the physiology. Once we know the anatomy of the disease, then only we go to pathology, which is an altered physiology. And unless we know anatomy and pathology in that sequence, you cannot guess the cause of the disease. Don't call somebody TB. It doesn't mean anything to me. He could be an athlete with his TB, or he could be on a deathbed with his TB. TB is not the diagnosis. And I think if we remember this, let me take you to the scenario of what is fever. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, let me get you the basics. I think what the forefathers taught us in basics is so vital in even clinical bedside medicine. Today, if I ask the postgraduate, why does a child get fever? He said, why? He has some disease. But why does the body heat up? Is it because the body and the nature wants to really punish us? Or is it for something else? Fever is the body's immune response to tissue injury. It's not infection. It is any tissue injury. Any injury, maybe traumatic, maybe chemical, maybe immunological, maybe just a malignancy. anything that injures tissue, the body's response is first fever. And it is meant to control damage and help to repair. When somebody gets a fracture of the leg and he can't even move, he curses the God and nature and he says, what has got what wrong with me? What has the nature done to me? The God says, you need a plaster, but till you reach the doctor, I have given you pain that will plaster your leg so that you don't break the bones further. Imagine if we did not have pain, we could have gone next day to an orthopedic surgeon and by then the whole bone was totally broken. Fever is a body's response which is meant to really control damage. And once the damage is controlled, repair it. And I think this can result from varieties of reasons. So don't equate fever with infection. Fever is just the body's response. And I think fever could also be at some times due to some thermoregulatory mechanism which is abnormal. After all, we all have a thermoregulatory center where in a hypothalamus there is a set point. Once I get a tissue injured, my body senses the need to heat up the body so that the damage is controlled and the repairing process starts. Now, once this thermoregulatory center is set up at say 103, whatever you do, the temperature will go to 103. It will not be controlled because the body knows the importance of setting up the high fever. And I think therefore sometimes even the environment, drugs, the increased metabolic rate like hyperthyroidism, many causes of fever besides infection and besides many other. Once we understand the basics, what fever means, fever does not lead to anything. Fever only tells you that there's something wrong with some tissue injured or something wrong with your thermoregulatory mechanism. Well, if you go down the line, the infection becomes the most common, but that doesn't mean that every time you just look at infection. The next slide, please. Now, if you really look at how do you guess the cause of fever? I told you first the anatomy. Unless you know where is the disease. Suppose there is a big noise in this hall just now. We want to know first where is the noise coming from. Is it from this hall? Is it from this building? Is it from this compound? Or is it from the road? Unless we know anatomy, we will not know pathology. If it is coming from the road, the causes are totally different than if it is coming from this hall. If it's coming from the road, it could be some happy situation, people are dancing, or it could be a threat, a bomb blast. How will you know that? You will have to look at the environment. If everybody is happily dancing, I know that the cause is not a bomb blast. If everybody is running away, I know the cause. So you need to look at the environment. You can't just make a diagnosis. And therefore, if we look at how really we can look at the cause of fever, first the anatomy. But look at the way the patients come to you first few days. First 2-3 days, there may not be even a semblance of where is this illness locating. You are lucky if there is a throat pain and a tonsillitis is easily diagnosed. Or if you have a blood and mucus in the stool, you know it's a dysentery. But many times, in the first 2 days, there is no clue at all where is the anatomy. When there is no clue to anatomy, it's a good way to analyze where are we getting led onto this. While we are open to wait for the progress, we need to know few things in fever. I bet if you ask 5 to 6 questions to every child with fever, you almost get a diagnosis. And I think if we practice that, you will get so confident that fever is nothing to worry. Every parent comes with a worry of high fever and they want the fever to be suppressed. I want to get the best out of that body's response to let me know what's the cause of fever. And I think if you really look at first, onset of fever, ask the first question to the mother, tell me on day 1, how did the fever start? If she says it started with a high fever, as again sometimes she would say, oh, it wasn't so high. What does it make a difference to a clinician? Have you ever thought what high fever means or what low fever means? Probably we have never been taught. Fever is a response to tissue injury, as I said, through the chemicals which come out of the body's immune system. So cytokines come up. Higher the amount of cytokines, higher the fever. Lower the amount of cytokines, lower the fever. So now I know whether the cytokines are produced in large number by the body or by a very small number. Why should a body prepare so much of cytokines? Either because at a local site there is a severe destruction, or there may not be severe destruction, but it's a widespread disease. Imagine a widespread trouble in the city, military is called. Imagine at a local site, there is a tremendous, some terrible thing happening, military also may be called. So a destructive lesion, severe inflammatory lesion at one point, or a widespread lesion, both will cause high fever, which will tell me that high fever will be seen in all viral infections. It's also typical in malaria because as the parasites enter the bloodstream, you suddenly get a stimulus and a high fever, and also bacterial infection at the site of entry of organism. Organisms enter the throat and settle there to cause a severe tonsillitis. I get high fever to start with. But not in terms of typhoid. Typhoid is a bacteremic disease. The bacteria slowly sneak into the bloodstream and then decide where to settle. And in typhoid, they decide to settle in the intestine. In pneumonia, they're settling in the lungs. In a meningitis, they decide to settle in the brain. But to begin with, they are just roaming around in the bloodstream, deciding which organ to attack, almost like a thief entering the building and deciding which floor and which room they must attack. It takes a little time for the body to realize what the damage is. And therefore, if you start with a low or moderate fever, you know that it's a bacteremic disease. And in the first 2-3 days, you won't know where you are going to settle. As a thief enters the building, nobody knows where he's going to hit finally. How important this could be. Have you asked this question any time? No. And every mother, illiterate, uneducated, every mother knows the details of all this, waiting for you to ask her, and she will give you all the information. And I think, the next one, please. And that is the first question I will ask. If you try this, 95, 98% you will get a diagnosis. Well, medicine is the science of uncertainty. What a thing. Science itself means a kind of a system which gives you a reasonable, correct interpretation. And then we say, medicine is a science of uncertainty. But that's a fact. And why is it so? You just know the name of the patient. At the most, you know his age and weight. You don't know his immune system. You don't know his background. You don't know the germ. You don't know the virulence of the germ. You don't know the strength of the germ. So there are too many variables. You can imagine a newborn gets a bad pneumonia without fever. An old man gets a severe disease without fever. But we are talking about a general population which is generally fairly fit and therefore expected to give you a reasonable, similar, standard response. That is where medicine is a science of uncertainty, and I'm sure with experience you know how to take this. But considering the fitness of an average society patient who comes to you, this always works well. So onset of fever, very important. Onset on day 1. Onset at the beginning of the whole illness, which is so important. Next is, of course, response to a paracetamol. It's only paracetamol. Believe me, in last 45 plus years, I have not touched any other medication other than paracetamol. I don't see the need. Why? Because I don't want to suppress fever, whereas the parents are in a hurry to get rid of fever, and you are hurried to oblige them. So you use combination medicines, okay, because you fall prey to their demands. They don't know that body is fighting with fever, and you are taking away that body's fight. Are you on the other side? So why are you doing that? But in short of explaining the parents and a fear that they will not understand, you fall prey to their demands and give medicines to kill fever, whereas you are likely to even kill a child. So tell the parent that fever is not a problem. Fever is body's ability to fight. Higher the fever, the body is fighting well. Why do you want to stop that fight? And I think that is important. Paracetamol just does that. Paracetamol takes away the discomfort of fever, but does not bring down fever. That's what we want. But unfortunately, most of us have no time. Most of us are not committed and convinced that your job is to explain to the parents what you think is best for their child and not to sell what they want. And I think once you get that, if the response to paracetamol is extremely poor, what do I mean by response? The child's comfort. I don't want the fever to come down. Ask every mother. She gives paracetamol, within 20-30 minutes the child starts playing. Every mother says, sir, fever is 103, I'm worried. What happens after paracetamol? Sir, he doesn't take rest, he is all over. That assures me that it's unlikely a serious disease. And I think that's important. But the most next important is the interfebrile period. If you bring down the discomfort of fever, a child is innocent. Child will start playing. And if the child plays, once the fever comes even a little down, 103 fever comes to 101, child is dancing all over. He is telling you that, doctor, don't worry. If you don't understand, I know. I have a mild disease, don't worry. I know my mother is worrying, but you don't worry. That's the message. Interfebrile period is so vital. But look at a child with typhoid. A fever comes down, but the child is still sick. He's lethargic. Oh, he doesn't want to play. Child is innocent. What's the difference between adult physicians? I know Dr. Tushar Shah is here. But what's the difference between adult physicians and pediatricians? Adult physicians, like all of us are adults, are adulterated in our behavior. Children are not adulterated, and so also pediatricians. So we are innocent. We feel this is right and we do that. So interfebrile period is so important. The child plays in spite of high fever, telling the doctor and the mother, don't worry, I'll get well in the next 2-3 days. The next slide, please. And I think if you looked at onset, you looked at the response, and then you look at the rhythm of fever. Sir, every time I give paracetamol, in the next 4 to 6 hours, the fever goes up. And if this happens rhythmically, every 4 to 6 hours you get fever, be sure it's either a viral infection or a bacterial infection or an immune-mediated response to any inflammation. Malaria doesn't do that. Malaria is very erratic. But look at the fun, how autoimmune disorders behave other than the infections that come from outside. Autoimmune is body's own response as a mistaken identity to your own parts. Autoimmunity means you are hitting your own part because you mistook it as an intruder. And most of them run fevers at 10, 12 hours. So the parents will say, so morning 8 and then evening 6 or 8, in between is fine. That's a rhythm. What about bacterial and viral infection? Sir, every 4 to 6 hours, moment the effect of paracetamol goes away, the fever comes up. And I think that rhythm tells you of what is the probability. And the next slide, please. And progress on day 3, 4. Do not act in the first 2-3 days. The best of the physician will not know the cause of fever. If you don't know the cause of fever, be honest and tell the parents, I don't know the cause of fever today, but I know how to know. Instead, you will call it viral in the first 2-3 days. In the next 2-3 days, a bacterial, give an antibiotic. In the second week, you call it typhoid. In the third week, you call it TB. Parents already know your great knowledge. So don't do that. Okay, be clear. I would write on my paper, no localization, no clue to diagnosis, no red flags, no worry, and wait for the disease to evolve. If the dark clouds come, you don't open an umbrella. There could be a bright sunshine. So don't ask me, when will the rain start? Don't ask me what's the diagnosis today. But be ready and observe. If you tell the parent this, every parent will thank you for not doing unnecessary things. Nobody likes to swallow drugs. Nobody likes to be pricked and do some test of which we know nothing thereafter. And I think be friendly with a child. And I think that often works. And therefore, most of the viral infections are better by day 3, day 4. Exceptions are always there. Let's go by the rule. When I teach my adolescent son, I teach him how to cross the road when it is green. I don't tell him anything beyond. Once he masters that, then I also tell him, son, how will you cross the road when the signals are not working? He can't say, I'll wait for the green. No. But that lesson comes after he has mastered the first. But at the end, I find that he walks through the red also. So that's a risk. And I think that is the philosophy of all this. And if you therefore ask these 5 questions, onset, response to paracetamol, interfebrile period, rhythm, progress on day 3, day 4. If you are lucky, the accompanying symptoms may guide you straight off. But in the first 2-3 days, you don't. The next slide, please. Let's do this on a case based now. Okay. This is the child who comes with fever at onset high. Fever at onset high, viral, bacterial at the site, malaria, or an autoimmune disorder. 4 things. Interfebrile period normal, bacterial is out. The rhythm regular, malaria is out. What remains is now autoimmune or viral. Trend on day 3 improving, viral. Accompanying symptoms, cold and cough. Every statement will make you a diagnosis. I'm talking about the most common conditions. And I'm sure they take care of 95% of routine office practice. We are not looking at 3 months of fever of unknown origin. What is fever of unknown origin? Unknown to everyone, including the best of the physician. Okay, so that's not our worry. And therefore, you could have diagnosed. The next slide, please. This was another one. Fever at onset high. Viral, bacterial, malarial, immune. Next tick. Interfebrile period sick. This is bacterial. Okay. Rhythm is regular. Yes, bacterial. Worsening on day 3, day 4. Yes, bacterial. But now he has got a throat pain, so it becomes a pharyngitis or a tonsillitis. It has started as high fever. There is no cold. If it was a viral pharyngitis, there would have been mostly rhinitis as well, bronchitis as well. Virus is a disseminated disease. Bacterial infection is a localized disease. This throat pain has no running nose. This throat pain has no brassy cough. So this is not viral. This is bacterial. But suppose he had no symptoms on day 3, day 4. Then I know that, next please, and therefore this is tonsillitis, but suppose the next one, and if it is no symptom, but we already said that the fever was high. What did the fever high means? Acute bacterial infection where the organisms have started causing a disease at the site of entry. And which is this kind of a bacterial infection which at the site of entry does not cause any symptoms, and that's a pyelonephritis. In an infant, pyelonephritis is always going to cheat all of you. But you know that there's an acute bacterial infection. And if on day 3, day 4 it has not localized anywhere, then you know it's a non-localizing acute bacterial infection, and don't give an antibiotic. You will miss it, and if you miss it, he will get it again, and you will use another antibiotic and cure him again. At the end of the day, he will have a chronic renal disease. And today, if you look at the whole scenario of a dialysis patient, they are all middle-aged people, maximum. Why are the middle-aged people getting into a renal dialysis? Because they were missed early in their childhood. And by the time they become old, they forgot that their doctor caused this. You get scot-free. Don't get into that. And I think that is where a pyelonephritis comes in. The next slide, please. Let's look at this another case. Fever at onset, again high. Yes, interfebrile normal. So this is not an acute bacterial infection. Next one, rhythm is regular every 12 hours. Oh, this is not bacterial or viral. This must be an autoimmune disorder. You can't diagnose autoimmune on day 2 or day 3, but you suspect, all right? And then you start looking at what kind of autoimmune disorders at what age are more common. For example, if I see an infant, then I know it's a Kawasaki disease coming up. It's a potentially a serious disease. And I don't waste time in giving some antibiotic or doing something. I've already in the first 2-3 lines, I've got an idea that, oh, this is not a usual infection, this is an autoimmune disorder. How is he on day 3, day 4? A bacterial would have got worse, viral would have got better. He's just the same. I know this is an autoimmune inflammatory disorder. The next one, please. And there are no other symptoms. The next one, go ahead. And therefore, it's an immunological disorder. We won't waste time in giving some treatment, antibiotic, doing some tests. No. We want to know which is common. At infant, Kawasaki is the most common, and I would have even sent him for a 2D echo to see whether he has already got a coronary artery disease. How could be by simply analyzing those 3-4 questions. And you can even diagnose Kawasaki on day 3, day 4, suspect. Kawasaki is diagnosed only after 5 days of fever. But you can suspect it on day 2, day 3 of fever. You can be ahead of what classical textbook says, only if you go systematically what it is. The next one, please. And this is another child. Go ahead. Now this is simple. The fever at high, but the rhythm is erratic. If it's erratic, it's malaria. But when do you call erratic or when do you call rhythm regular if you don't keep on hitting high for that fever with multiple antipyretics? Otherwise, nothing is rhythmic. Everything is flat. And I think don't make a mistake of using all those drugs. Go ahead. And therefore, this is simply a malaria. The next one, please. Look at this child now. It started as mild to moderate fever. Moment it starts mild to moderate, I know that this is not a bacterial infection which comes at the site of infection. This is a bacteremic disease. A bacteremic disease may decide to settle anywhere in the body. There are 3 common sites where it will settle. One is typhoid, another is pneumonia, third is meningitis. Now you are looking at which of these 3 this child is getting onto. But on day 3, day 4, he has got no symptoms. If he had meningitis, he would have started becoming irritable, vomited, having headache, becoming drowsy. If he had pneumonia, he would have started breathing a bit fast. You looked at all that, but you did not find any. You know that this must be a typhoid fever. The next one, please, go ahead. If he developed tachypnea, yes, go ahead. Then he has pneumonia. If he developed vomiting and irritability as well. What does this slide tell you? On the first day only, you decided that this is going to be a bacterial infection, bacteremic, settling somewhere. And you would have told the patient on day 1, let me know if he gets irritable. Let me know if he starts vomiting. Just keep a watch on his breathing. If he starts breathing fast, please come back to me. And if there is nothing happening, let me see him after 3-4 days. I would almost suspect typhoid fever. The next one, please. And I think, therefore, how do you approach the fever as it evolves? See, the medical textbooks are obsolete and useless because they start with a diagnosis and go down to symptoms. And the patient comes the other way around, reverse, and you have to reach the diagnosis. What's the use of a medical textbook? Useless. Don't read typhoid. Don't read pneumonia. They all look alike. Read from below upwards. And that's where the clinical medicine is. And that's the fun. You will enjoy, like a CBI, finding out some murder case. And they get a kick out of it. You should get a kick out of diagnosing something which you could, before even did any test. And that's possible. So how do you go by that? Day 1 and 2, rule out seriousness. How do you rule out seriousness? It's so simple. Ask 2 questions to parents and examine 2 things, and you know whether the child is serious. So easy, even in an infant. What are the 2 questions? What's his behavior? How does a child behave when the fever comes down a little? Oh, sir, he plays. I'm happy. He's not serious. What's the second question? How is his urine output? It tells you that the brain is getting perfused all right. The kidneys are also getting perfused all right. 2 organs where a perfusion and oxygenation is seen by parents, only if you ask them. Make a habit of asking, how is the child? How is the child you can see when he comes in? And ask them whether he's passing a reasonable amount of urine. And look at what? Look at only 2 things, the heart rate and the respiratory rate. When did we last count a respiratory rate or a heart rate for a minute? Oh, we have only 1 minute, sir, to see one patient. How can you waste time looking at his heart rate? Okay, his heart must be beating. That's why he came here. So important. Okay. If you pick up an unduly fast heart rate or a respiratory rate, you know something is brewing serious. Now to experienced people like most of you are here are, you can just put a stethoscope, you know what the heart rate is. You can just put your hand on a pulse, you know it. But please register it. Just feeling it is not enough. There is a difference between hearing and listening. Okay, most of us hear, but we don't listen. So take a note of that. If you look at these four things, heart rate, respiratory rate, urine output, you know he's serious or not. If he's not serious, look for localization. Next slide, please. Day 3, day 4, look for meningitis pneumonia. You don't want to miss that. Throat pain already has come in, dysentery has come in. No symptoms, pyelonephritis. Don't forget that. Next one. By day 5, 7, look for typhoid Kawasaki. They fool you in the first few days. The next one. And by day 4, you keep in mind partially treated infection. But I'm sure now none of this crowd will treat anything partially. You would be impartial. And therefore, but keep in mind partially treated. People use antibiotic as an antipyretic and fool everyone. And I think that's the way we'll go by. The next slide, please. And lately, TB, malignancy, etc., forget, that's not so common, and that everybody knows that there is something going wrong. The next slide, please. Should fever be treated? I've already talked about this. You want the previous one? Yeah. See, I'm not worried about fever beyond 7 days. Fever beyond 7 days is already treated and messed up. Okay. When I see commonly now, sir, I have a problem. My colleague phones me. I said, what's the problem? Sir, last 1 month he has continuous fever. I said, what have you done? Sir, I've done everything. Huh? Then why are you wanting me to do now? Nothing is left for me. What is everything? Sir, I tried 2-3 antibiotics. Very good. I've done all tests. Excellent. Now what do you want? Sir, I want you to tell us what is wrong. I said, I know what is wrong with you. So the point is that how can I diagnose such a thing? Then I will have to stop everything and say, let's start from the beginning. That should not happen. And therefore, I think that's the thing. Should the fever be treated? No. Go ahead. I think treat only discomfort. Don't treat fever. Don't treat fever. You have something? Okay. All right. But don't go by this.
SOGI is a short form abbreviation we use for systemic onset juvenile idiopathic arthritis, not relevant for our day-to-day practice.
I just included that in case somebody said, oh, but you did not say that. But I did not want to even talk about it. So forget about that. The point is, we want to diagnose everything in the first few days. Okay. When it comes to 2 weeks, it's very clear most of us have failed. Okay. We start from that presumption. Don't treat fever. We already said that. Relieve discomfort, if any. Next one. Peak of fever correlates with discomfort. Now here is a mother who says, sir, 99, I immediately give paracetamol, but sir, in spite of that, fever goes up. Then the doctor says, oh, paracetamol is not good. Give something else. No, you must give medication for fever at the peak of fever. The body has already decided to set up at 103. Nothing will stop it. And you need to be at that point to bring down fever and bring down discomfort. Generally, discomfort of a child correlates with peak of fever, not in adults. Adults are uncomfortable before the fever comes or before the neighbor gets fever. So that is not that. See, the best part of pediatrics is you are dealing with innocence. And believe me that go by what child says and you are always right. Don't look at anything else. And I think that's where fever rises in spite of paracetamol if you give it too early and treat the cause of fever and not fever itself. The next one, please. Just a word. Do I have time or I'm running out of time? Yeah. I think CBC is the most misused investigation. CBC stands for complete blood count, which gives very incomplete interpretation. unless you know what you're looking for. And this is one area where I find that you find an excuse to give some drug because somebody helps you with a CBC. Now, in an undergraduate days, we are all impressed by those polymorphs and lymphocytes. You know, the total has to be 100. So if you want to bluff, be very correct. Total has to be 100. If polys go up, the lymphos go down. If the lymphos go up, the polys go down. What does it mean? What are polymorphs like? Polymorphs are like an ordinary constables on the road. What do they do? Nothing. What do they mean? Nothing. Can you interpret? No. They are there doing nothing. They are there if Bollywood actor comes, the PM comes. They are there when the theft occurs, the fire occurs. They are there. They are of no great use. Polymorphs are like that. There are too many. They come first wherever the problem is or where there is no problem also. So polymorphs are useless. So if polys go up, the lymphos go down. So again, lymphocytes also don't tell us anything. Then what gives us the right information? Right information comes from eosinophils and the platelets. They are specialized people. When few constables come around, you don't know. But when a fire engine comes, you know it's a fire. Or when the police come in large number, you know it's a theft. Or when the police commissioner comes, you know it's a PM. So those constables don't tell you what the problem is. And it's eosinophils, platelets, and to a certain extent hemoglobin. Look at these three. Don't look at polys, lymphos. And you can see that when there is an acute infection, like the first, acute bacterial, third, acute viral, fourth, typhoid, all acute infections have almost an eosinopenia, suppressed eosinophils. Of course, this means that some pathologist very conscientiously gives you the report. Everywhere there is yes, no, but let's believe that we follow standards. And I think that is where it is. Look at the rest of them. Look at the second column. High count, high polymorphs, but a normal eosinophils. Tells you that this is not an infection, this is something else. So look at eosinophils. Similarly, look at platelets. Now, see the typhoid, the counts are low. It's an acute bacterial infection, but the counts are low. So there is no question of just deciding on the count or a polymorphs your basis of diagnosis. But the platelets tell you, the low platelets on acute viral, third, fourth, typhoid, and last but one, malaria, and of course the leukemia, the acute lymphocytic leukemia. So you look at eosinophils, look at platelets, and to a certain extent hemoglobin, because low hemoglobin tells you malaria maybe, or even a leukemia. The last slide, please. Let me summarize what I've been saying. 5 questions help probable diagnosis. Onset of fever, interfebrile period, rhythm, progress, and accompanying symptoms. I omitted response to paracetamol here only because that if it is no response at all, it may sound that there is something serious brewing up. Most of the fevers respond at least to some extent to make the child comfortable. But if it does not, then take a note. You already, antennas are up that even after paracetamol, you have. Make a habit of asking these 5 questions. And maybe, I think a group like what both Tushars are doing, I think you could even set up a kind of a research to say, how often you fail. I'm sure you will fail, but far less often than otherwise. And if you find this, let us teach the whole world. Let's teach the Westerners that we sit here and imagine what the disease must be, whereas they need all investigations. For them, and unfortunately for some of us who follow them, what's the definition of a normal child? Complete absence of abnormality. Total absence of abnormality. So I had to prove many things to say, oh, you look normal, but you may not be normal. I need to investigate you. There's no difference between a criminal and an honest person. Both look alike. Sometimes the criminals are PhD in a suit moving about. But if you see what they are doing, if you keep a watch on them, then the difference stands out. And I think that is what we want to look at. The next one, please. Rule out seriousness, observe localizing signs. Next one. Relieve discomfort caused by fever. and not suppress fever by itself. CBC only on day 3, day 4. Even the bone marrow takes time to understand that there is an intruder. So bone marrow takes about 3-4 days before it decides who is the intruder and how to act. Don't do CBC on first day unless you are suspecting malaria, then you do a peripheral smear. Interpret CBC report correctly. I think if you follow this, I bet your diagnosis of fever would be not difficult. Don't believe the super consultants because they don't see common things. This morning Tushar said, common things first. And before I end up, I'll tell you 2 stories. I showed a cow to an intern who had just finished his MBBS. I asked him, what is this animal? He said, cow. I said, are you sure? He said, yes. Do you want to investigate? He said, no. So sure. I asked MD, what is this? He said, looks cow, but one needs to investigate and confirm. Yeah, because he had studied so much. Then I asked the DM, who had super specialists. He said, sir, there are many possibilities. See how the knowledge goes up. So I said, what's the possibility? He said, atrophied elephant. He said, sir, believe atrophied elephant looked like cow and totally mistaken. I said, do you have a proof? He pulled out a Lancet of 60s and showed me a report. What a brilliant knowledge. I said, what next? He said, hypertrophied goat. Again, he was right. He gave me many possibilities. Finally, I said, what about cow? He said, if I rule out all that, then I'll call it cow. The message is, we are all looking at cows. We are not looking at atrophied elephant, etc. And one fellow went to his family physician just for a routine check. And he said, look, I'm a little worried about you because your neck veins are very prominent. Go to a cardiologist. So he went to a cardiologist. Cardiologist had to do multiple tests to confirm that his heart is normal. And he said, good news, heart is normal, but your lower eyelids are a bit puffy, so you must visit a nephrologist. So he went there, all tests done. He said, kidneys are normal, but your eyes are a bit prominent. You see an endocrinologist, this may be hyperthyroidism. He went there too. All hormonal studies normal. Come back to his family physician, said, what is wrong with me? He said, look, best of the consultants in this city don't know. So you're having a rare disease. He said, what about my life? He said, you never know. He decided to enjoy his wealth, go on a foreign trip. Okay, he did not know how long his life. He goes to a branded, buy a shirt, and he tells the salesman, show me a branded shirt. He said, sir, what's your collar size? He said 14. Sir, it's 16. If you are wearing 14, your neck veins will come up, your eyes will be puffy, and your eyes will be prominent. Oh, he said, that's my problem. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm trying to say is that if a salesman can diagnose, if an intern can diagnose, why we don't? Only because we seem to know much more at the expense of so little. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm sure after listening to sir, none of you want to hear any one of us talk anything else. So just to complete, we will give a small memento, a totally useless memento, as sir says it. Just give it. Vinita, please do the honors.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really a great pleasure and honor to have you.
Thank you.